From a highly secure network of top secret locations across the central time zone, this is the Spurs Insider. I am Mike Finger, joined as always by Express News Spurs beat writers Jeff McDonald and Tom Orsborn. And at the risk of divulging Jeff's secret location and at the risk of making this podcast obsolete by the time a lot of you listen to it on Wednesday morning, Jeff's location is pretty close to a group of people and an opponent that has been the cure for what ails the Spurs so far this year. Will that continue? We'll find out on Tuesday night. But for the state of the Spurs, let's go to Jeff McDonald. What's going on?
I don't know. That was a very enthusiastic intro. That was nice. I liked it. You do well right before we go on. You sound like you just woke up, and as soon as you hit 3, 2, 1, you're automatically ready to go.
I'm a professional, Jeff.
There's
professional.
There's no warm up.
Gamer.
There's no warm ups. You know, I think even Pavarotti's got a warm up in the dressing room. None of that. You just go right into it. It's great.
I appreciate being appreciated. Are you in a city that's going to cure what ails the Spurs? Are they going to be able to just turn it on like the host of the Spurs Insider podcast turns it on whenever the lights are bright, whenever the people are listening and watching? Are they going to be able to match my example, Jeff, against the Oklahoma City Thunder?
I was going to say, we can stop being cryptic. I'm here in Oklahoma City for the game that's going to occur tonight. This is Tuesday morning, so a lot of this will be obsolete. I just want to point out every single prediction I've made in the Oklahoma City Spurs series so far has been wrong. I'm 0 for 3 in the way that the Spurs are 3-0. So, yeah, I don't think they're going to win tonight. So I'll put that on record now, and by the time people hear this, they'll know whether I was right or wrong. And
the hardcore fans listen on Tuesday afternoons after our fine producer Monty Bach gets it up. So this could be a pregame podcast for the most devoted listeners.
I just think,
and they want to hear you. The most devoted pregame listeners want to hear you use the word that you've used 3 times before this season about Oklahoma City Thunder, because they think that it has to do. They think it's good luck. So go ahead and use the word, Jeff.
It's just the Bart Simpson meme right now. Just say the word.
Yes,
I will. But first, I just think those poor little scrappy Thunders are due. Like they're tired of being bullied by the big bad bullying Spurs. You know.
So what does that make this for the Spurs?
And the Thunder are playing well. You know, they won 3 in a row. You know, they weren't playing so well after the last time they met the Spurs on Christmas Day. They went 6-6 in their next 12, but now they've righted the ship and they're back to being the big bad Thunder again. They've won 3 in a row, so I think this makes this game difficult.
Say the word.
Difficult.
People wanted you to say another word.
Unwinnable.
Yes.
It's unwinnable.
Yes.
It's unwinnable. Okay. All right. I did it. I performed. I feel like a trained SEAL, but I performed. Where's my fish? Where's my tuna?
I don't know. Are the Spurs struggling? 5-5 over the last 10. I mean, by the standards of the previous 6 seasons, they're on a hot streak.
Yeah, right.
By the standards of what we've seen from the local Cagers over the previous 2.5 months, this has been a part in the season where they're starting to face some challenges, it seems.
I was just gonna say they beat the Lakers at home. They beat the Celtics on the road. You know, they lose close one at Minnesota on the second night of a back-to-back. I'm not, if I'm a Spur fan, I'm not complaining too much.
I remember in our last podcast, I believe it was the wise Tom Orsborn who said that with the 4 games they had coming up, that they better win the one in Memphis last Tuesday night because the next 3 were going to be tough. And that's the one they didn't get.
No.
And they ended up almost getting the next 3. They got the next 2 and were in control in Minnesota and looked like they were going to get the 3 that looked difficult. And things did not work out down the stretch against Minnesota. But all this is to say is that they've been at their best against some of the best opponents. If they've taken some step backs in the more quote unquote winnable games, Um, I guess that's just part of growing as a team and learning how to have the focus every night.
Yeah, the win.
That was a great Victor Wembanyama quote after the Memphis game when they lost, kind of speaking to that and the way they play to the played down or up to various opponents. And I'm trying to get it right, but the quote was along the lines of, the good thing is we find out that we can compete with anybody and look anybody in the eye. But the bad thing is we tend to look everybody in the eye. And I thought that was a great quote, especially but from a 7'4" man.
Uh-huh. Tom, what were you trying to say earlier when we were cutting you off so rudely as we so often do?
That's all right. They yeah, the win in Boston, that was a good one. I was there for that one, and it was a quality win to say the least.
I heard the refs won it for him.
Yeah. Sour grapes, sour grapes.
Jaylen Brown not too happy about the officiating in that game.
That is
That is a season-long trend for the Spurs. I'm not sure people realize how big of an advantage that the local cagers have. And oftentimes, like every NBA fan base in the country, like every sports fan base in the world, there's a tendency for the fans of a team, the people who follow a team, to think that their team gets a raw deal from the officiating. The Spurs have a huge advantage in free throw margin. I believe it's the biggest in the league, Jeff. And that makes a lot of sense with the way they play. They have three guys in the backcourt who we'll get into probably later in this podcast, who like getting downhill, who like attacking the rim, who like getting to the basket. They have the biggest matchup advantage in the league. I mean that literally, and biggest, and that he's 7'4", Victor Wembanyama. He's going to get a lot of free throws. The three guards are going to get a lot of free throws. They don't take as many three-pointers as everybody else does. So it makes sense that you'd get to the free throw line more than, say, the Boston Celtics, who shoot more three-pointers than just about anybody in the league. Like, that makes sense that disparity would exist. So I think in some cases it is Jaylen Brown showing some sour grapes there. I understand that there were some calls that probably could have gone either way, that the Spurs might have got a little more of advantage than they usually do. But all this is to say, I think most nights the Spurs are going to shoot more free throws than the opponent, and that has to do with making up the deficit that they have at the 3-point line. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and before you get to that, the great Dan Shaughnessy of the Boston Globe took Jaylen Brown to task the day of the game in his column. Just, it wasn't a column centered on him, but it was the notes column, just saying, he's complaining about a lot these days, and just, settle down and stop complaining. So
he's having a heck of a year.
Yeah, but he's that's kind of his MO.
Well, I'm complaining about a lot these days too, so maybe
But your complaints are legitimate.
That's true. That's true.
What do you think about
pizza?
What do you think about the Spurs offense? And just in general, you look at the trend over the past few weeks. They're not scoring as much as they used to. The efficiency numbers are dropping. What's sort of notable about that is the defense is retaining, if not improving upon, its dominance from early in the season. Like, the defense is there. They're just playing a lot of rock fights, it seems, these days. It's not the beautiful game victories that we saw for a lot of November and December. They're struggling with teams, and the defense is staying there for the most part, but the offense is not scoring as much or as efficiently as it once was. And I'm wondering, Jeff, you've been with the team the last few days. What's the plan there?
Well, the first part is to try to diagnose what's going on, and it could be kind of a chicken and an egg thing. But like, the first thing you notice, just from the 3,000-foot view, bird's eye view, is those guards that you alluded to earlier. De'Aaron Fox, but particularly Steph Castle and Dylan Harper, are not wreaking the same sort of havoc they were back in December, back when the Spurs were on that 8 game winning streak, being the Thunder 3 times, and everybody wanted to anoint them as the next big three or something. They've been very inefficient. Steph Castle's been very inefficient. Dylan Harper seems to have hit kind of a rookie wall. They're not getting into the paint as well as at will, the way they were during that stretch. I think teams have adjusted to how those guys like to play as the season's worn along. I think those guys, especially the young guys, are worn out. I think there's just been a lot of travel, a lot of games. We've kind of detailed that. I think they're kind of hit kind of what they call the dog days of the season for those young guys, and I think it's something a lot of young guys go through. They just got to push through. We've kind of been talking to a lot of the guys about that. And so but the other part of it is they're not making 3-pointers. Like if one of those two things were true, I think things will loosen up a bit. And I can't decide if they're not making the 3-pointers because the looks aren't as good, because the guards aren't getting to the paint as well, or if the guards are unable to get in the paint as well because the 3-pointers aren't going down. But the 3-point game has been pretty atrocious for the past month as well. And that's something that, I mean, we kind of predicted it coming into the season, and then they started the season, and like they had some guys that started hot, like Harrison Barnes was Mr. 100%, and Julian Champagny, who's been up and down, was up, and Devin Vassell had some big games, and he's been out. That has not helped. But now they're kind of back to they're kind of regressed to the mean 3-point wise, and so it's kind of when you can't make 3-pointers in this day and age, it makes everything else a lot harder. So it's a combination of that. The offense works in symbiosis. You hit the outside shots, the inside shots open up. You get into the paint, it opens up the outside shots. And with both of those things failing right now, it has been like a rock fight to be able to score.
Yeah, the
middle of that
the Celtics noticeably sagged off those guys to double Wemby. So yeah, I mean, like you said, it affects everything, and that's pretty much why he struggled in the first half in Boston. They just left Castle alone, Harper, and doubled Wemby a lot.
In the middle of Jeff's excellent soliloquy there, analyzing the Spurs' offensive woes, I was going to ask him what the great Manu Ginobili would say about this, and he used it in the middle of it. He beat me to it. It was Manu always talked about regression to the mean, and Jeff slipped that in there just like the Manu Ginobili of this podcast. Excellent job there, sir.
Thank you. I mean, because they are probably a 30-ish% team. So if they're going to shoot 40 for a month, they're probably going to shoot 20 for a month. And that's where we are now. They're shooting 20 for a month.
And that leads us to the fact that if you cannot count on them keeping up their 3-point rate from early in the season, which was above expectations and probably beyond realistic expectations of what this team should be doing, then you need to be more consistent with your strengths. And that's what you talked about in terms of attacking the rim and getting more from your downhill guards. And yes, both of those guys, I'm talking about Stephon Castle and Dylan Harper, have been in the league less than 16 months. They're both young guys, and it's natural that they're going to hit their rough spots. But I think you can expect more improvement there and more of an upswing there than everybody starting to hit 40% from 3-point range again.
Yes.
Because I don't think this team is going to be a 40%, 38%, 37% 3-point shooting team. It would be nice if they could do that, but that's just asking too many guys to shoot better than they've ever shot before. And that could lead you into questions about should they add more guys who can make 3-pointers on down the line. But I think if you're going to look for improvement from this team in the next day, week, month, what have you, I think it's more likely to come from those guards being more like the Spurs want those guards to be, rather than everybody hitting 40% from 3-point land again.
I think when it comes to the 3-point shooting, it is what we thought it was when the season started. Like, to get to the next level, they're going to have to add more consistent 3-point shooting. And whether that's this year at the trade deadline or in the summer, it's something that's going to have to be addressed. I think everybody knows that too. I don't think it's a surprise to the front office that they can't hit threes at the rate that they need to. But they need that guy where it seems like every team has them. With that I watch play the Spurs. Like the ball swings around and it's that guy. Well, this is automatic. For a while that was Harrison Barnes this year, but again, expecting him to shoot better than he's ever shot before for an entire season is probably unrealistic. They need a guy that is just that guy. And I don't know if that's something you go get at the trade deadline right now. I don't know if this is too soon or if it's something you work on during the summer. But they need that guy to take the next jump, I think, is when you talk about winning playoff series and things like that.
Well, considering that question, and I'm sure that other astute followers of the Spurs have thought about this, but I'm not sure I've seen it discussed much. Could this team really miss Devin Vassell too? Like, is that part of why the offense doesn't look as good? Could he be that key piece that just provides that shooting threat and makes the whole thing go, or is that overstating his?
I don't think he's the linchpin, but I think when you're going through some sort of offensive slump, having as many guys as possible who have a chance of breaking that drought is helpful. I mean, and there have been times throughout the season where the Spurs are going through a lull, and it's Vassell that hits a couple of 12-footers or hits some open threes that kind of loosens the lid a little bit. And sometimes it's been other people, but I think in terms of just probability and percentages, having more guys who are able to break a cold spell is helpful, and that's where they've missed him. I think when you've had these lulls in the middle of the game where it's just kind of Steph Castle trying to make something happen and losing the ball, or guys missing shots, or just having a Devin Vassell he's one of those guys that does have spots on the floor where he feels like he's automatic. Like you can run a play for him to get him like a little 12-footer on the baseline, and he feels automatic there. And to have that kind of guy just to break a drought in the course of a game, they have missed that. I really do. I don't think he's the linchpin to the entire offense that makes it go or anything like that, but he is a valuable piece of it that has been missing.
The other thing I've noticed, 38%. Yeah, shooting about 38% from deep this season, and he's getting close. He's getting closer in Boston. I talked to him a little bit, and he's getting closer to 2-on-2 work. So, as Mitch said, he's trending in the right direction.
The thing that goes along with that is, with Devin being out, is Mitch Johnson is basically, since Vassell has been out, playing a consistent group of 8 guys, where it's at the start of the year you were seeing 10, sometimes 11, and it's 8 guys every night that you can be sure are going to play every night. That 9th and 10th spot has been Lendy Waters, has been Kelly Olynyk, has been some Jeremy Sohan, but not really. I think when you only have 8 guys in the rotation who are playing every night, that can be a big burden on those 8 guys. And I guess that's a way of saying that there's a spot open. Even if Devin Vassell comes back, there's a spot open if the Spurs would go out and get another rotation piece. It wouldn't necessarily have to be a starter. It would not have to be a guy who's playing 30 minutes a night. But I think that there is a spot available for that shooter that Jeff is talking about, that guy who can play some defense and who, when the ball is swung in his direction, can hit it. Now, can they get that guy? Is that guy available for what the Spurs can offer? I'm not sure. We have, 3-4 weeks to find out before the trade deadline. But I think that is the spot in the rotation that the Spurs would target if they were to add someone at the deadline. In terms of the starting lineup, there's a spot now filled by Victor Wembanyama, and he apparently is there to stay.
Well, unless he gets hurt again.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the plan. He's back in the starting lineup. And playing once you get to the high 20s, where he's allowed to play in the high 20s minutes wise, that makes it easier to start him. I kind of got we can talk about the Memphis thing where they got to the end of that game and their best player was unavailable for the final 3.5 minutes of a 1-point game because
go ahead and talk about that.
Because they ran out of minutes. He was at 20, and it's hard. It's hard to divide 20 minutes for a guy. If you think about it, it's 5 minutes a quarter. Now, what do you do with that? It's the first 5 minutes of the quarter? Is it the last 5 minutes? How do you split up? And that's the one where it makes a lot of sense to do what they did when he first came back from the calf strain and just sit him for an entire quarter. And now you're doing 20 minutes out of three quarters. But we talked to Mitch about that before the next game, wherever that was, or I can't. I guess I was back at home, and he kind of indicated they thought about that again, but they don't like that. Even though it worked, even though they won that game where Victor played only the last three quarters, they didn't like what it did to the rotation. They didn't like how Victor has to come in after an entire the phrase Mitch used was the game takes on its own personality, and Victor has to come in after a quarter and figure out how to fit into that personality, and that's not fair to him, and it's not fair to the other guys who have to figure out how to fit in around that. That they've already been playing one way for an entire quarter. Now they just didn't really like how it felt. I guess it doesn't matter now because he's at 27, 28 minutes and trending upwards there. So you don't have to worry about it as much. It's easier to divvy his minutes between four quarters, and you can start him and finish him as they did in wherever I was last. I can't Minnesota.
Well, then in Boston, you see him finish with those two clutch 15-footers in the last 2 minutes. So it was perfect example of what you get when he's on the floor in those situations.
Yeah, but a lot of people were curious. In Memphis, you lose the game by a point, and your best player just has to sit there and watch the last 3.5 minutes, and you're just not going to deviate from that. And once the game is under those are front office decisions. I guess I need to say this out loud. Mitch has no control over that. He has control over how the minutes are divvied up, but he's given a number. And once the game starts and you get to the final 3 minutes, he's not allowed to go, yeah, but it's a 1-point game, we're going to play him anyway. He just doesn't have that authority, and he's not in the position of his career where he's just going to go rogue and in the guts of the game and defy what the number he's been given. So you can argue that they could have been divvied up better so that Victor's available at the end of that game, but how is the question. So that's that. It wasn't I will say, if you'll remember how that Memphis game ended, Jock Landale was taking 2 free throws to kind of try to, I think it was to put Memphis up 3, and missed them both. But Victor was up off the bench. I know this because we have floor seats there in Memphis. Victor got up off the bench while Landale was going to attempt the second free throw and came over to Mitch. There's probably about 15 seconds left, and is trying to convince Mitch to put him back in the game. Call timeout and put him back in the game. And I don't know this, probably could have asked this, but I think if Jock Landale had made that free throw and the clock was stopped, Mitch might have called timeout and put Victor in for the final 16 seconds for a final play. But because Landale missed, they decided to get the rebound and try to go, which isn't a bad strategy when you've got De'Aaron Fox with the ball in his hands. But De'Aaron got down there and kind of didn't have any, just kind of made a mistake, made a bad play, and the game was over. But I think Vic was trying to get back into that game if he could for a final possession, and I think they might have done it if the clock had stopped.
The next night was Lakers at home, and while I was thinking about this, you did bring this up because I found it so interesting. I was going to bring it up about Mitch talking about how they did not like the way they divvied up Victor's minutes in the cup, in which they ended Oklahoma City's 16-game winning streak and got maybe their most rousing victory of the year. I found that so striking that he said, "No, yeah, we're not going to do that anymore," even though it worked. It was just something that they didn't want to continue that. And I guess it makes sense. It's weird though, to not want to do something that worked. I understand the point. And the Spurs did get out to a big deficit in that Oklahoma City game in Las Vegas. It probably wouldn't have worked every night. They had the right sort of confluence of events to make it pay off. And again, we're talking about something that probably will not be relevant anymore because Victor's minutes restrictions are gone and he's a starter again. But I thought that was a really cool, in maybe their most memorable victory of the season, they pulled that off in a way that I thought was so cool, in that they made Victor play a 3-quarter game and had him on the court at the end. And as Tom said, when he's on the floor at the end of games, a thing that stood out to me about the end of the Celtics victory is, for everything that Victor has gone through high and low in terms of figuring out what he is on the court, figuring out how he's best deployed, shooting 3-pointers, fadeaways, trying to post up at the rim, trying to get lobs, trying to be a guard, trying to be a center. Like when the Spurs drafted Victor Wembanyama, 7'4" Frenchman, gonna change the game. One thing that I had in my head, and I think a lot of fans had in their head, was this is a guy who, when the game is on the line, a guy with jump shot touch, with skill, with the ability to do all kinds of things. This is a guy you can throw the ball to in a Tim Duncan-like spot. And Tim probably posted up a little closer than Victor did in Boston. Both of the post-ups in Boston were free throw line extended 15, 18 feet, and just let him make an unguardable shot. They were the two shots in Boston were sort of fadeaways, which I know aren't the highest percentage shot on the basketball floor, but for Victor, they're pretty high percentage. And to me, that was like the culmination of make people respect your 3-point shot, make people respect the idea that De'Aaron Fox might take a shot here, make people respect the fact that you got to pay attention to Stephon Castle and Keldon Johnson and whoever else was on the floor at that time. Make somebody guard Victor one-on-one and then make that shot unguardable. And Victor did that twice against Boston. And one was in the last 2 minutes, and one was in I think the second to last possession. And he made them both. And I think he's going to make
a pretty good contested effort by a 7-footer.
Yes, and he's not going to make them all, but I think this is a long, convoluted, ridiculous way to say that. I think the Spurs are figuring out more and more how they want to win games and where they need to be at the end of games. And even though they're not winning these games, the game Jeff covered, Minnesota, like we talked about the three guards not having a great game, but correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, but didn't De'Aaron Fox hit a pretty big shot in the last 30 seconds there to give them a brief lead?
Yeah, he hit a couple big shots down the stretch, yeah, after being pretty middling the entire
It's not like... My point is, it's not like this team has just been lost at sea and not understanding how to score when the game's on the line. Even in these losses, even in these games that haven't gone well, it seems like they have an idea of what they're trying to accomplish, whether that's getting the ball to Victor in the spots where he likes it or letting De'Aaron Fox do exactly what they traded for him to do. There was Victor didn't have quite the same position against the Timberwolves and on that elbow jumper and on the last possession that he had against Boston, but it was still a shot that they liked him taking. He just didn't make it. And at the other end, and Edwards just made an all-world play. Mitch was really upset about, I think he thought there might have been a moving screen, something like that. But Ant was in a pick and roll against Steph Castle and Victor Wembanyama, and he got to his spot and made a heck of a shot. And sometimes you're going to lose to all league players making all league plays. And I think
that's what the Celtics did the night before.
Exactly.
All league player making like going back to Vic, like when he was drafted, everybody wants a comp. Like who's he like? What could he be? And is he Giannis? Is he this? Is he that? And I always thought from the beginning he should be like a 7'4" Kevin Durant, like Kevin Durant but taller.
Yeah.
And to me, I mean, just find those spots on the floor where you can make a jumper that nobody can block and be automatic at it. Dirk was kind of that way too, and that's what I saw watching into that Boston game was he's doing the Kevin Durant stuff right there. And I think more of that, please. Like I know everybody wants him to be 7'4" and in the post and dunk a lot, and some of that should be incorporated too. Obviously, he can make 3-pointers, and he should take some of those. But to me, his bread and butter should be like Kevin Durant mid-range game. And if he can get to where he can make those at a Kevin Durant-like clip, I think it's game over for a lot of people.
Who's the best mid-range shooter of all time, basically? But yes.
Well,
that's good. No, I agree with you. But I think what I was trying to get at is he couldn't have come in and just been that right away. I think that the last 2.5 years have led to him getting closer and closer to being exactly what you said. and that he had to try a lot of things, and he had to show defenses a lot of things, and he had to let the team around him learn a lot of things before you can get to the point where it's automatic, where everybody knows where the ball's going in these situations and they still can't stop it. And against Boston, that's the way it worked. Against Minnesota, that's the way it almost worked. Just sometimes you have to make the shots. I'm just trying to point out here that even though we talked about how much the Spurs offense is struggling and how the team is hitting kind of a wall and kind of getting tired, there's still been some positive developments over the past week.
What's happened vibes wise is just, I think probably that week, those 10 days in December probably set expectations higher than they probably needed to be, and for good reason. I mean, you win 8 in a row, you beat the Thunder 3 times, you end Oklahoma City's 16-game winning streak. Like, of course you're going to be on top of the world. Everybody's going to want to anoint you as the the next in line, and they've just come back down to earth. They're back to who they. I mean, if they had not had they could have the same record, but it came in a different way, and I don't know that we would be so. It would feel like such a roller coaster. I mean, the truth of the matter is they haven't been as good since Christmas Day. Like, that was like the zenith of their season so far, was Christmas Day. They have not. I don't know if they played a game since then where I was like, wow, they just played that game like awesome, start to finish. They've won some games we didn't maybe think they were going to win. They've lost some games that didn't think they were going to lose, but I don't remember just a Christmas Day-like game. Like, that was just like a master class. And it's probably not fair to expect them to have a master at this point in their growth as a team to have a master class every night. So I think if you just think about it from again, the 30,000 foot view of what this team, like, they're second place in the West. You look at their record, like, you just have to be happy with the progress and realize it's not going to be linear. They're going to have some games that make you want to tear your hair out if you're a fan, or make you wonder, what are they doing? What's going on with the offense? Or what is, Steph Castle or this guy or that guy doing? But if you look at the entire progress of the team, like, they're way ahead of schedule of where anybody thought they were going to be.
I would change happy to elated. I mean, you're grinding through a tough part of the season with a win over the Lakers, a win at Boston, barely lose to the Timberwolves again on the second of a back-to-back. I mean, and second in the West. I mean, that's pretty damn good for a team at
it's really just that those 10 days in December just tricked everybody into thinking the Spurs, are unbeatable, and they shouldn't lose to Utah at home, and they shouldn't lose this game or that game. And they just are. They're still young in spots. The season does that to teams. There's schedule losses.
It's the NBA.
Yeah. So I don't think it's cause for panic, but I can understand why people's expectations might have gotten a little out of whack. Based on what they did against Oklahoma City leading up to Christmas Day. I think we probably got a little over our skis. I know every NBA podcast in existence, wanted to anoint them as the next best thing, and
there are other NBA podcasts.
We've already done this bit. You don't have to do it again.
Well, since we're doing old tired bits, can I do my weekly report on an interview with a guy who never plays?
Yeah, that's like your forte, right? You write the best columns on dudes that do not play. You ought to do one on Willis Hall next. He also doesn't play.
I think that'd be a good column. That's a good idea. By the way, I could win an award for that. Also, before I get into my weekly segment, like sports editor Nick Talbot, who's listening as he always does, guiding our podcast, has been pressing me to. I can't even say this without laughing. To choose our best podcasts of 2025 for award submission. And that, man, that's the thought of like a judge sitting in a room somewhere listening to Jeff McDonald and Tom Orsborn and I do our shtick and deciding, is this, is this worthy
look,
award consideration? Like, how are you going to taking notes? Like, they should have mentioned this here. They should. That line was very unprofessional. I don't know, man. I don't know, man.
I think it's an unfair ask of you because there's just so many to pick from. Like, how do you winnow down the like just the gold, just the massive amount of gold podcasts that we've done in the past year? How do you whittle that down to like three?
I can't do it.
I don't envy you.
I
I
would
don't envy you.
implore our listeners, if you have a specific Spurs Insider podcast in mind from the past year that just blew you away more than all the others, you should pass that along to Nick Talbot or pass that along to us, and so we can get the award. Consider it. I don't know why there are awards. I thought we were the only NBA podcast. I thought we were the only newspaper podcast in the country, but maybe there are others.
I gotta
Anyway,
say, I don't believe in war. I think art is subjective. I don't believe in getting awards for art anyway. But it's an honor just to be nominated. Are we nominated? We nominate ourselves. I think
I think we're nominating ourselves. Anyway, back to the weekly segment about the guy who never plays. A week after a very, very nice sit-down interview with Carter Bryant, who got sent down to the G League for a game, but is still very much part of the Spurs' present plans, as Tom reported in Boston, and probably will be playing again soon. Got a chance to talk along with friend of the podcast, Michael Wright, to Jeremy Sohan after the Lakers game on last week. And part of what precipitated that was he got into another little deal with Jared Vanderbilt, in which Jeremy was typically Jeremy talking about how he just had a friendly back and forth and that one guy was emotionally stable and he was quite joyful. And that's what people love about Jeremy Sohan, and that he just got under the skin of Jared Vanderbilt, and Jeremy acted like he was taking a walk in the park. But he was very blunt and candid about the fact that, yes, he has been unable to not think about the fact that his time in San Antonio might be coming to an end, whether it is this month before the trade deadline or this offseason. He's not playing as much. He played in that game. He played in the Memphis game. He gave some good minutes in that Memphis game the night before. It wasn't a lot of minutes, but he had a nice little stint. He had a less successful stint against the Lakers, but still did some good things. I think since then on this road trip, it's been very sparing. He just continues to be on the margins when it comes to the rotation. And I just speaking personally, there's been ups and downs with Jeremy with the media for understandable reasons, but I do think he really wants to be here. And it's if it does not work out and if he has to go, and he might be one of the most attractive pieces the Spurs have to offer in a trade this month. It'll be a little sad. It might be better for him somewhere else to fit on a team with more 3-point shooting around him, which I think he needs. I think for him to fit in, he needs to not be expected to be the 3-point shooter. And on this team, it's just hard to hide another player who isn't a threat from the arc. And so, he continues to be a solid defender. The problem is like the Spurs just their defense isn't hurting. Their defense continues to be well above average, even when they've hit their so-called wall. So we'll see how it works out, but he's aware of it. He continues to be positive. He continues to be a good teammate. Victor Wembanyama has had some really, really nice things to say about him and his attitude. Keldon Johnson's had some nice things to say about him and his attitude. We'll just see how it works out. But yes, if you're wondering if he's aware that he might not be a Spur forever, he is aware of that and still trying to plug through. So there's that segment.
All right.
Anything y'all?
That was great.
I think y'all talked about Jeremy before, so that's good.
Yeah, I did enjoy the little dust up with Jared Vanderbilt. That was kind of old school Jeremy. That was nice, and it reminded me. I have two kids. One's about to be a teenager, so almost two teenagers, and that reminded me of them so much. Like one of them instigating something and being like, "What? I didn't do anything. I was over there seeing if he was okay." I just loved his reaction to that.
I had fun sitting down with Luke Cornett in the locker room this week to talk about his love of comedy. And Then in Boston, probably the most entertaining tribute video I've ever seen. Celtics sprinkled in a lot of his, didn't sprinkle in, most of it was on his celebrations and jokes and quips, and it was quite entertaining to watch that.
Did they include his one? The funniest thing I saw up there when we were up there last year was the campaign video that he did against Derek White for Man of the Year.
Yeah, they had everything in there. It was a really good video.
Yeah. Jeff was mentioning his kids. He had a really good BlueSky joke this morning that made me chuckle a lot. Where I guess our friend Joe Mazzulla of the Boston Celtics was upset after a couple days after Jaylen Brown was upset about the officiating against the Spurs. Joe Mazzulla was upset about something in the Celtics' most recent game, where he answered every question like 6, 8 in a row in his post-game press conference with the phrase illegal screen, illegal screen, illegal screen. And that led Jeff McDonald to say what?
I don't remember. You read it to me.
Well, I don't have it in front of me, but I think that's something about you and your kids at bedtime.
Yeah, that's me trying to get my kids off their iPads at bedtime.
That's pretty good.
Yeah,
Pretty good.
sometimes they come to me first thing in the morning.
That's great. All right. Well, we have a big week ahead, as we always do. Looking at the schedule here, after the Spurs face the Thunder in Oklahoma City tonight in a game that Jeff McDonald called unwinnable, the local Cagers return home for a game against Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Milwaukee Bucks on Thursday. Back against the Timberwolves and Ant Edwards trying to get revenge on Saturday here at the Frostbank Center, and a Martin Luther King Day matinee, a 4 p.m. start against the Utah Jazz on Monday before we convene again at our secure locations on Tuesday morning for the next podcast. We'll see what happens, if the Spurs can get past that wall, if they continue to have rock fights, or if they figure it all out. Until next time, take care of each other and keep it real.